Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the Business Growth Club. This is your weekly edition from us, and in this week's edition we're going to be looking at customer lifetime value. Now this particular video picks up what we did last week. In last week's video we looked at the issue of discounting and how discounting is very different to the theory of a loss leader. However, in that one I said that in order to run a loss leader and not just a discount, you needed to know what your customer lifetime value is. So now that we know the difference between discounts and loss leaders, we need to spend a little bit more time saying, well, what loss leader can I give? And to know that information, you must know your customer lifetime value. Now, customer lifetime value is quite simple. It's merely the total value to a business of each of its customers. Quite simple. So what's the average value of the average customer to a business? Now obviously, in order to know your lifetime value, you need to calculate it. Now don't run away because I'm asking you to do some simple numbers. It's actually quite straightforward, and in many ways it's quite enjoyable because it can be quite insightful and quite interesting to see just what's happening in your business and how much people are really worth to you, and actually the difference between some customers and other customers. So all you need to do is put aside about half an hour to go through some exercises. Not on this video, I'm just going to tell you how to do it in this video, but after this video you need half an hour, maybe 45 minutes, just to calculate your lifetime value. It's one of the most important half an hour or 45 minutes you will ever spend in marketing in your business, because it's an absolutely crucial number. So number one, we want to figure out what's the total income for each customer over time. Now something people often miss here is they just group together all of their customers. Now when doing this, it's important to remember the referrals that you get from each customer. Remember, for all of the customers that you have, not all of them will have come from genuine marketing activities. Maybe half of them came from marketing activities, and then other people came from particular customers via referrals. So you need to first group your customers into the referral tree. So you've got the customer at the top and then any referrals that they've brought. So for customer A, say, who's brought 2 different referrals, you need to bring those 2 different people into the lifetime value of customer A. Now you've got a choice at this stage whether you want to consider all of your customers or actually to group your customers into different customer types. For instance, it might be customers in terms of the different type of customers you've got. So it might be big businesses, small businesses, or affluent consumers, smaller consumers, something like that. So you might group them in a sensible kind of way. Or you might say via products and services. So these customers buy these products, say your luxury products or a certain service line or a certain type of product that you provide or service that you provide, or any other demographic. It might be that there's a certain type of consumer or a certain type of customer. So sometimes in a business it becomes obvious that you don't want to measure every customer as if they're equal. You want to say, well, there's different groups of customers. There's good and bad customers within those groups, but often you say, well, we have a few different target markets or a few different type of customers. Now, in order to bring this to life, let me give you some personal examples. I'm going to pick just 3 different customer groups that we have, just as a bit of an example, and running through this video I'm going to reference back to this so you've got something to target. I could say that we have lots of different customer groups, however I might want to focus on 3 different areas. So people who buy products and services, so we produce like DVD box sets or membership clubs like the Business Growth Club and stuff like this, and some of our customers only buy those types of ones. So I could say, well, that's one distinct customer group. We know that there are certain businesses that just buy our box sets and nothing else. We know there's other people who they just come to our seminars or just our events or mentoring groups. So they don't do any one-to-one activities. And then we have people who do one-to-one mentoring and also clients that we run campaigns for. Now in campaigns I might want to split those down into different elements of campaigns. It might be online campaigns, offline campaigns, different type of ones. To keep this simple, I'm just going to say 3 different groups: people who buy products and services, people who attend events and seminars and group type activities, and people who do one-to-one mentoring, just to make it simple. So from our business I could be saying, okay, what's the value of our customers? And I could say, well, the most is worth a few $100,000 and the least is worth, £200. But that would be a little bit misleading, because I want to know, well, what's the value of the one-to-one people? And what's the value of the people who do only group stuff? And what's the value of people who just buy products? So I can see the business in different areas. Now this is important not just because these numbers tend to be different, but because you tend to do marketing activities related to a particular product or service. So if I wanted to do a loss leader, the objective of this video, for people buying products, well, that would be very different to a marketing campaign to get people to events and seminars to lead into mentoring groups, or different to the type of marketing we might do to get people onto one-to-one mentoring. So it's very different type of marketing activities. Some businesses you might just have a single service or single type of customers and you want to do it across the board. But you can see for us it kind of makes sense that we know that people who buy products and services, generally speaking, tend to be different to people who want to come to events and do group mentoring, and they tend to be different who do one-to-one type activities. Of course, some people might do all of them, in which case you generally calculate that person to be in the top group. So let's say somebody buys a product, they come to a seminar, and then they upgrade to one-to-one, where you put them into the one-to-one group and calculate all of that income into that particular area. So kind of always upgrade upwards if you want to. Okay, so now that you've actually got your different customer groups, so you're saying these are the people I'm trying to figure out their lifetime value, what are you actually looking for? Simply, you're trying to look at what's the total value of this particular customer group. Now, one way of doing this is just to look at what's happened in the last 12 months, so the year to date, so the last 12 months, what's happened, and then have a look at what the income per individual customer is. So let's say you've figured out, say you've got 100 customers in 3 different groups, and in group number 1 you figured out that all of the income that customer has spent with you, all of the transactions that have taken place, and you know that in that customer group people tend to stay with you for a couple of years. So you've got to kind of either forecast it into the future, or you know that customers stay with you for a couple of years or whatever. You could do that way. Another way of doing it is looking at customers who are lapsed, so customers who've disappeared from the business, and have a look at their lifetime journey. So you might pick, say you've got 500 customers and 50 of them no longer trade with you. We'll go back in history and have a look at how much they spent during their lifetime. Or you can do a representative sample. So look at your business, and this is where you've got to be quite honest with yourself, and have a look at, say, your existing and lapsed customers, and say, well, you know, here's the 20% of people that are really representative of the business. Here's some bigger clients, some smaller clients, some people who are really happy, some people who weren't happy. You can do that kind of dynamic modelling and figure out, well, these are kind of normal type of customers, if you will. This is a genuine example of my business. Now that might sound quite difficult to do because I can see that this is a theory, and sometimes it's difficult to explain a theory without an example. So I'm going to use another example from me, and I'm going to show you how I would calculate this, and hopefully this will start to make sense and it won't just be theory, it'll actually be something which is usable. I said we had a couple of different groups that I was interested in. People who buy just products, people who do seminars and events, people who do mentoring. Now what I might look at for these different customer groups is, for the products, I might simply go back to the 2009 cohort. So I will find all of the customers who bought products in 2009 and track what happened to date. Now some of them may be lapsed, they no longer buy from us. Some of them may be still buying from us, but I might decide, well actually, all of 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012 and up to 2013, well that's enough. You know, that's a safe number of transactions for me to worry about. Because of course some of these people might buy from us forever. They might buy from us until they retire or we retire, and you can't keep on going forever. So you might want to just draw a line. And I think going back to 2009 and saying, well, let's have a look at all the customers from that date. So that's what I'd figure out for all of our product type customers. Now I might use the same approach for all of our customers and just have different totals, but I'm going to give you some different approaches, so the different approaches I talked about before make sense. So I might do for group a percentage upsell, because the whole point of selling a seminar would be to get somebody to a more in-depth boot camp, and from that boot camp it might be to sell them a 12-month group mentoring program. So with that I might actually say, for every one customer we got, how many of them upgraded? So I might say, obviously 100% of them attended the first event, and 43% went on to the boot camp, and then 16% went on to buy the 12-month program. And then I can figure out the income for each of those, and I can do the percentages, and I can say, okay, well the average customer spent this much. It wouldn't be fair for me just to take the income from the seminar, nor would it make sense for me to take the income from the seminar, the bootcamp and the 12 group sessions, because only 16% of people ended up doing that. So I could come up with the average, so I could do it on a percentage, so I could say, well the average customer, that was what happened, so that's their average value. the same as with the cohort from 2009. Well, this is what all of them spent over that period, and here's the average of what those customers spent. Now, another approach could be for mentoring clients. I could look at a percentage retention. So I could say, okay, how much do these people spend in a year, and then how long do they stay? Now, we have 85% retention, so I was saying, okay, so if that's how many people are staying, I can do the maths and figure out, how many people we will lose every year. Now, I might want to cap that at 3 years, because if you've got a retention rate such as that, we go back to that problem of having to kind of wait around for 20 years to know what really happens. So I might just want to play it safe and say, well, on a sensible retention rate, let's do it for 3 years, and I'll do that as a calculated total. So what I'll be doing for each of these is figuring out how much each customer has spent during that time. So for products, how much all of the customers from 2009 have spent, and I'll have a total for each individual customer. Or I've calculated for our group coaching people how much each individual customer is worth on an average of their upsell. Or for mentoring, I've looked at how much customers spend, and I've looked at the average cost of that, or the average fee that we're charging, and then I've looked at the attrition rate over 3 years, and I've come up with a standard figure. Now, obviously, when I'm calculating the products, I'd end up having a total for every customer. So what I'd need to do there is take the total of every customer, add it up, and compute the mean average. Whereas with the group and the mentoring, I've already calculated an average based on those different percentage models. Now, however you want to do it, if you want to do it where you simply take the total income of all of your customers from a particular year or year to date and divide it, or you want to go different customer lines or different products, or however much you want to go into, however much detail you want to go into, which will depend on the type of business and your complexity, you will come up with a number, which is the average value of that customer, the average income from a customer in that particular group. It might be your average customer, or it might be an average product or service, or a different customer type, but whatever, you will have one or more numbers. However, those numbers are just for gross income. You need to calculate the profit value to get the actual genuine profit of a customer, not just their income. So what would you do there? Well, it's quite simple. Take that average customer lifetime value. So if we've figured out a customer is worth X amount of money, and we times it by our profit margin. Remember, that's quite simple to figure out. We talked about that last week. Just take your net profit figure in your accounts, divide it by your top line figure, your turnover, and then that will come to a percentage, and that percentage is your profit margin. So let's imagine that our income is a £10,000 average of a customer, but we only make a 10% margin. It would be £10,000 times by that 10%, so the income would only be, in the customer lifetime value profitability, £1,000. I know that sounds like an awful lot of numbers, and I did say before it might take you half an hour or 45 minutes to figure all of this out. However, it's absolutely crucial that you get a grip on these numbers. If you're not so good with the numbers, drop me a line and we'll see if we can help you, or speak to your advisor that you work with on your financial matters. Or re-listen to this, or whatever you do. It's really important that you come to an understanding of what these numbers are. Don't be deterred by this because I'm making you do difficult kind of maths if you're not so familiar with business financials. You absolutely have to get used to these numbers, because as you're about to see in the second half of this video, it's so important that you know the income value, so the actual customer lifetime value in terms of profitability, because it's the basis of everything else you do with all of your marketing campaigns. So it's not a number you can't afford to figure out. So if you're financially minded, you've listened to this, it's probably going to be really easy for you. But if you're not so, like I say, drop us a line and we'll help you, or speak to your advisors and work with the people that do your accounts. But come to this number, because if you know this number, I'm going to show you how you can do an awful lot with this number. Now I'm going to use some examples from us, just again as I say, for the 3 different customer groups I'm interested in. I'm going to imagine that I've rounded these numbers up to make it easy, but our product profitability, so the profit we make from the average customer in their lifetime who buy products, is £1,000. And group mentoring is £7,000. And actual private one-to-one mentoring is £15,000. So we're just going to imagine these figures, and this is what we make, and that's the total profit per customer over their lifetime. Okay, once we know those numbers, we use them firstly for our marketing annual budget, our yearly marketing budget. Now, how do you figure out your yearly marketing budget? Some of you might say, well, how much did we spend on marketing last year? And we'll do the same, or more or less. Or we'll look at retained profit. So we might say, okay, well, we made 150k profit last year, and we'll keep 50k in the business, or take it out as a dividend. Of the other 100,000, we'll reinvest in the business. So you do it as a kind of percentage of retained profit. You could do it as a percentage turnover. Let's spend 20% of business turnover on marketing. Or you could do what a lot of people do and not really have a budget and just take each idea as it comes. Someone pitches something and you say, well, what are we going to do? Now, which of these is the best? Well, if you've taken the time to go through the bit in the first half of the video and you've actually figured out your customer lifetime value, be it just your average customer lifetime value or be it for your particular product or service, whatever detailed analysis you went into, you've now got a number. You know over the lifetime what a customer's worth to you in terms of profit. So what should you do if you've done that type of analysis? Well, for people who fall into that group, my advice to you would be not to bother with marketing. In fact, I would start buying customers instead. You might ask me what's the difference? Well, marketing is just doing general activities because you fancy doing a bit of marketing. Whereas once you know these profit numbers, these customer lifetime value numbers, you can forget marketing and playing around with stuff and you can start buying customers. Now you might say to me, how do you possibly buy a customer? Sure, you do marketing because that's the only something you can do, you just have to do marketing. Well, no. How you buy a customer is you figure out what the profitability, the lifetime value of that customer is, and then you figure out what you're prepared to buy a customer for. You don't do marketing to customers, you do the purchase of customers. How do you do this? Well, simply, you trial something first. You have a pilot campaign. You can use a loss leader, you can use lots of other approaches, but in this video we're talking about loss leaders. So you can use a loss leader and then figure out from your loss leaders what the return on investment is. Of course, looking to the future, once you're happy with those return on investments, you just keep increasing those activities until it stops working. You always want to be adding new campaigns and doing new pilots as well. So you turn the whole idea of a marketing budget on its head and you say, no, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be running campaigns. I'll pilot them small. I'll use loss leaders to figure out how much it's costing me to bring in customers, and then if I'm happy with the amount that I'm buying customers with, I'll just increase that until it stops working or I need to retire and give up for marketing. And I'll trial new ideas because no matter how good your marketing campaigns are, there's often something better just around the corner. We have campaigns, take direct mail campaigns, which work brilliantly and have a fantastic value, and we know for spending £100 on direct mail how much we can buy a customer for. Now, it'd be really easy for me to say, I'm not going to bother with this new dynamic Facebook advertising because we get enough customers through direct mail or through telemarketing or through advertising or through pay-per-click or through events or some other tactic. However, if we do the dynamic online advertising and it works, well, it might work better than the direct mail or it might work worse. However, if I never pilot it, I will never know. So I won't know if it's a better way to buy my customers. And the loss leader just makes this even easier for me because it allows a way in to measure my customer performance and my marketing performance and decide if that's an acceptable value. To remind you, what is a loss leader? Well, we looked at this definition last week. It's simply goods, products, services sold at a loss in order to attract future customers. The whole point is to get the customers on board for the future. Now, what does all of this mean? Because I'm talking about calculating a lifetime value. I've told you not to discount but use loss leaders, and I've said once you've got this lifetime value, start buying customers. And all of this might sound a bit theoretical and you're not quite sure, well, how does it work in the real world? Well, let's return to my example. Remember that we calculated that we make roughly £1,000 profit, lifetime value, on our product clients. And we know that from our group and event mentoring type clients, 7,000, and mentoring one-to-one, 15,000. So these are the numbers we're working with. So if that's the income, I can decide how much I can buy my customers, and I can use a loss leader to do exactly that. So let's have a look at the product. Let's say that I have a product that's £500. Now in the old discounting model, I want to discount something to try and sell them, to use a discount, not a loss leader. I might add a 15% discount. Would that be a good or a bad idea? Well, once you know that you have a lifetime value and you can start doing loss leaders, all of a sudden this idea of a 15% discount of the first order becomes ridiculous. I can decide to say, well, for a £500 product, let's just imagine that I offer it at half price. Now you'll probably agree with me that if I offered a box set, let's say it's 101 ways to grow a business, and it's £500, and I say you can have it for 50% off if you buy it now, if you don't leave this page or if you respond by the end of a week. People might be very motivated to do that, yeah? I might increase the number of customers into the business. Whereas if I simply said 15% off, it might be interesting, it might not, but who cares? But because I'm using Loss Leader, I'm saying I'm going to take £250 off the value. So all of a sudden, I've taken a £500 product and I can offer it for £250. Now, is that worth doing? Well, if it was a discounting model, I wouldn't know. Because number one, I'd be discounting blind, and secondly, I'd keep offering discounts. Whereas I'm not going to offer discounts, I'm going to offer a loss leader. This is just to get people on board. And then I become very good at customer marketing, which I'm going to talk about in a future video in this series, so that I continuously sell to people. So I'm making £1,000 and I'm prepared to say £250 of that, for 50% off for £250, I'm going to sacrifice that. So my income from that client is only going to be £750. Well, is that worth doing? Is it really worth buying a customer for £250 if you're going to make a net of £750? Well, most people would consider that a good idea. In fact, if I can do that, I will never stop buying customers for that rate. If I give you £250, you give me £750 back, well, I'm quite happy with that. So because I've done my lifetime value, I'm applying the theory of loss leaders. I'm discounting something, but it's as a loss leader, not a standalone discount. I can afford to be quite bold with it, and I can really get people on board. The same theory applies to the group activities. Let's say we're saying the 7,000 on our first event. We'll stick with £500. Let's say the first event was £500 to attend. Now you might well say, if we're going to make £7,000 average for the average customer, do we really want to make £500 on the first sale, or do we want to give that away for free? Now if we could give somebody a £500 seminar, which we give them totally for free, we'd imagine an awful lot more people would attend. Whereas try that with a 15% discount, a few more people might be interested. Try promoting an event that should be £500 entirely for free, well, all of a sudden, you get a lot more people interested. Now, is it worth doing that? Well, I've said if I'm getting a lot more people interested in the event, then all of a sudden, I'm not making £7,000, I'm making £6,500 because I've lost £500 on my first sale, but I've got significantly more people interested. So I'm buying customers, I'm spending £500 to make £6,500, not £7,000. That's an acceptable loss leader. Mentoring, the same theory might apply. So let's say with the mentoring, I'm prepared to give away a free session entirely free of charge. Same theory as before, because I know what income I'm going to get from people. Now, of course, you've got to account for your time, you've got to look at conversion rates, and we're going to look at each of these different kind of product streams and service streams in next week's video, and we're going to take this into a lot more practical examples and see, is it always a loss leader that would be best? Or actually, could we do something else? Would a trial be better? What other sort of marketing formats could we use? So we're going to pick up this story in next week's video and take it to the next level. So in summary, you need to know your customer lifetime value. Don't tell me that you've not got the time to calculate it, or you listen to the start of a video and you find it too complicated and you're not good with numbers. If that's the case, well, drop us a line and we'll explain how to do it. Somebody will help you to calculate that, or work with your advisor. So next time you sit down with your accountant, ask them to figure this out with you. Might cost you a little bit for them to sit down and do this, but it would be really worth it. Really, any decent accountant should be looking at these type of issues with you. This should be something that they're already engaged with you with. So don't tell me you've not got time to figure this out, because it's so important. Because once you know this, you can forget about marketing budgets and you can start buying customers. I can assure you, when you get to the position when you know how much a customer's worth to you, then when you consider marketing campaigns, it becomes real fun, because you figure out the cost of it and you figure out your conversion rates, so you know, well, this is the discount I can offer, or this is the loss leader, or another tactic you can apply, and then you can say, great, that's £500 and I'm making £10,000. How many of these £500 investments do I want to make? Well, you would never stop making those investments. You would just make them forever. You just have to make sure that your results are consistent and it's scalable. And as I'm alluding to, whilst I started this series looking at discounting, and I'm saying a loss leader is one way to do it, it's not the only way, but it's just a good introduction for me. But in next week's video, I'll be showing you how to use loss leaders practically, and also some other tactics that you can use. So you know what customer lifetime value is. Once you know that, forget about these budgets and actually start buying customers. And it is a very exciting process to start spending about £500 and making several £1,000s. Once you get into that position, that's a very positive position to be in. And that's where any successful business gets to. So that's probably enough for now. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it's been interesting. I know it's probably been challenging because I'm asking you to forget idea of budgets and start buying customers, and I'm saying you've got to do some calculations to figure stuff out. But I can promise you it really will pay dividends in the future for you. So between now and receiving the next video, I hope you have a fantastic time in business. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed it, and goodbye for now.